He's editor-in-chief of Breitbart News and a New York Times best-selling author. And on this podcast, he brings deep research, prescient analysis, and world-class guests. He's Alex Marlow, and this is The Alex Marlow Show.
Spicy show coming up for you today. We're going to get our first ever guest in The Alex Marlow Show, Dr. Sebastian Gorka, and a lot of breaking news that we're going to get into right away. I will say that this one, Dr. G's interview, you guys are going to love it. The intention was to try to save this thing, keep it in the can, industry speak, for have something on reserve if we need it, for Monday, because Monday I've got a wild day. I'll be doing 3 a.m. radio for 3 hours on Sirius XM for Breitbart, and I was thinking that, well, let's try to pre-tape a show. We did the interview with Dr. Gorka. It's so timely, it's so good that we decided we're going to put it out today, and plus that'll allow me to be on time to be on Don Jr.'s show later, which normally I think is Rumble's best place to get that. But all of you who's sending me an email at aloha@alexmarlow.com, I read them all. I appreciate them. Most are very complimentary. Some are not. I get a kick out of both. I learn from all of them. Leaving a comment, subscribing, recommending the show to 10,000 friends and family members. That's how we go. That's how we grow. And I only got a couple of pot roast recipes. I got a couple, but I'm soliciting that stuff because it's something that I will use. I will use them, and then I can report back, and it'll be a thing. We'll like it. But there's a lot going on in the news. Just as we're coming on to record here, Matt Gaetz has withdrawn his application to be the Attorney General. I'll read you his statement. I had excellent meetings with senators yesterday. I appreciate their thoughtful feedback and the incredible support of so many. While the momentum was strong, it is clear that my confirmation was unfairly becoming a distraction to the critical work of the Trump fans' transition. There's no time to waste on a needlessly protracted Washington scuffle. Thus, I'll be withdrawing my name from consideration to serve as Attorney General. Trump's Department of Justice must be in place and ready on day one. This is not good news, and I'll tell you, it's not that Gaetz was ever going to get through. That's not really the point. You guys heard my 4D chess episode where I explained all the calculus that I think went into this selection. And I think there was quite a bit of calculus. I think they understood that Gaetz was on the ropes with this forthcoming House investigation that was going to come out. If he was a seated member of the House, it could be released. Ethics Committee launched its investigation into Trump, and the report was going to come out. And it was into Gaetz, and it was going to come out, and that might not look good for Gaetz. Maybe it looks okay, because recall, I played for you yesterday the Sunny Hostin hostage video where she'd issue a correction on air for going too hard on Gaetz on The View. So maybe it would have made Gaetz look okay, but obviously that's a lot of heat he was going to take on some of the allegations against him, particularly that he had some sort of sexual encounter with a 17-year-old. That's a lot of heat, and Gaetz is the type of guy, though, that can handle it. Gaetz is happiest when he's in the spotlight. So I had thought Gaetz was basically going to be the stalking horse. He was going to be someone who was going to take all the flack for all of Trump's other nominees, many of whom are controversial. You got Robert Kennedy, you got Pete Hegseth, you got Tulsi Gabbard. I like a lot of these people, and I love some of them, but they're not controversial. So Gaetz stuck out even among that group. And I thought that was a pretty cool idea, because usually someone gets blocked. And then there was this inside straight opportunity where if Trump could get a recess appointment, meaning the Senate would adjourn for a certain amount of time, then Trump can appoint whoever he wants to the cabinet. This has become more commonplace in recent years, as I just explained in an earlier show. I thought there was a chance Gaetz actually could get through in that way. He wasn't going to get a traditional confirmation, but it was becoming clear the recess appointment option is probably not going to happen, because if you look at the makeup of the Senate, Collins and Murkowski are barely Republicans, and J.D. Vance will have been a vice president, and his replacement wouldn't have been picked by then. And then you've got Mitch McConnell, who said he's not interested in recess appointments, and the new guy from Ohio, Curtis, who is replacing Romney, he's not interested either. So they were not going to adjourn in all likelihood to allow Gaetz to get through. And so it was becoming, unfortunately, a big headache to have Gaetz around. And it was not necessarily the 4D chess game. And we weren't necessarily winning it. We were playing it, but we weren't necessarily winning it. and he dropped out. But I'm just wondering, and I don't have any insider information on this. It's too close to, it came out just recently, and I didn't have a chance to make any phone calls. I'll be talking to people later, and we'll hopefully report back tomorrow with anything I can hear. But something obviously changed that changed the calculus where they would throw in the towel this quickly. That's what I'm confused by. They didn't even feel like they could make it to Thanksgiving. That they gave up now. Something changed, and I don't know what it is yet. And that concerns me because that means that we could be looking towards perhaps other dominoes falling. The one of the considerations that I'm thinking of is the Pete Hegseth nomination as well for Pentagon. He is now the most uncertain, particularly with Gaetz gone. It was always going to be a not guarantee that he was going to get a Senate confirmation. And now with the recess appointments looking less likely that those could happen, at least in the short term, that does feel like that could harm him as well. But we're now seeing police reports and other reports coming out regarding a sexual encounter that he had in 2017. I will spare you a lot of the details, but I boned up on them last night when I was reading around to see if there's anything really big that was coming out. And police reports, really graphic. I won't give you all of them, but it seemed like that he had a sexual encounter with a person in Monterey in 2017. He went to a women's conference. He was a speaker there. The reports are that he's very flirtatious with a lot of the women and ended up having sex with one of them. Afterward, it seemed like she immediately started to regret that. And she went in and got a rape kit test. This is all the type of stuff we saw over and over again throughout Me Too, where it's very hard to tell the difference between someone from the initial reports, the he said, she said reports, between someone who actually was a victim or someone who pursued it on her own and then regretted it. And I've been canceled for saying this stuff before. They've tried to cancel me for this. But a lot of what Me Too devolved into was women who were regretting sexual encounters that they had, claiming that they'd been raped afterwards. And this does not mean that I'm not minimizing rape, one of the worst crimes imaginable. In fact, I'm actually trying to protect actual victims of rape. That is not the same as what became rape in the Me Too era. The definition was changing, and not in a good way, in a way that provided less clarity. And I think actual people who have been abused in that way, I think that they're getting cheapened. It's cheapened when you start lumping in any sort of sexual encounter that you regret with a rape. And I got to say, this is all the hallmarks of that. It's an anonymous person, a Jane Doe. Hegseth said she showed immediate signs of regret after the encounter. And here's the kicker in this Mediaite story. She said she would tell her husband she fell asleep on a couch in someone else's room. So she was with her husband and then went to someone else's room. That someone else was Pete Hegseth, and they apparently had sex. So again, I will make this point over and over on the show. If you're in a happy marriage, this stuff does not happen. So I recommend that to everyone. It keeps you a lot of headache. And Pete could miss out on a dream job because of this, and that would be a lesson. That'd be a lesson for everyone. But the bottom line is that I don't know how significant the evidence is. Obviously, these are serious charges. You got to take those seriously, considering the position he's vying for. Does not seem to be any hard and fast evidence or any evidence that this is a pattern with him. But you know that when you're talking about leading a major bureaucracy and going from being on the couch, pun slightly intended, at Fox and Friends to leading the bureaucracy called the Pentagon, one of the biggest ones we got, then you got to be buttoned up on this stuff. But more importantly, you got to come clean with the people vetting you. And this is where I think the real sticking point is. Evidence has emerged, or people have shared with me, that I don't think Hegseth was forthcoming with the Trump transition about this. So he didn't tell the Trump transition maybe at all. And I'll try to run that down for you guys in the next day or two to know for sure. And that's really the no-no here. Because obviously, if he raped someone, yeah, of course. But there's based on this report, that's not what it sounds like to me. And we'll see. Maybe more details will come out. But it seems like the main thing here is dishonesty. The main thing is that he was not upfront with the Trump transition team. And if that's the case, he's not going to survive the confirmation. And that's not good because there's a lot going on right now. And we're talking way too much about Trump's controversial picks. This was very fun for a week and a half. We had a lot of fun, the trolliness of these picks, the fact that these are hardcores, the fact that these are fearless people. And now all of a sudden we lose Gaetz, so he's gone. And then Hegseth now, this is looking really not good. Again, it's not just the police report. That not telling the transition about it seems insane to me. It truly seems insane. I'm processing this. You can see me on the air processing this. It just, the more I think about it, the more, how do you not tell them about this? There's a police report filed. And then apparently he paid her off. But I mean, that's, I guess, par for the course these days for rich and powerful men who step out on their wives or whatever. Even though I don't think he was married at the time. I don't know. He did a few divorces, Hegseth. Amorous guy. He's just amorous. That's all it is. We hope. But here's what's going on in this country right now. And this is the point that I want to make. And this is the biggest point, is that there's a lot of bad things happening. We know that Joe Biden greenlit this use of long-range missiles for Ukraine, and that's had some real significant blowback. The dominoes are falling. A report this morning from the Ukraine military, so I don't know for sure, but an ICBM was fired at Ukraine from Russia, intercontinental ballistic missile. First time this has ever happened in human-to-human conflict as far as we can tell, and it's happening within Europe. So from the Ukrainian Air Force reported this. So ICBMs can house nukes in them. This one didn't, but they're very expensive. They're not that accurate. They're very visible, and they could have nukes. This one didn't, but it could. So what's going on here? A message is being sent, and it's Joe Biden's fault. Joe Biden is losing the plot here. So all of his BS is accelerating right now. We talked about with Trump and the transition, meeting with the transition. He said that his administration was going to make it smooth as possible for Trump. That's not happening. Approves these long-range missiles into Russia. Ukraine allegedly fires one. Now Russia is sending ICBMs throughout intercontinental Europe. This is not good. This is a bind for Trump because Trump, well, I'm sure, is tempted to get involved, and he can't because of the thing called the Logan Act. And because of that, if Trump does try to liaison with Putin, even though he's going to have to on day one, that he could get impeached. And given the makeup of the Senate, I would not be guaranteed that there wouldn't be a conviction. So Trump has got to not get involved at all. And in the meantime, Biden is trying to execute parts of his agenda. And it's not just this. These lame duck judicial picks that I talked about, Trump finally sent a warning to Republican senators. The Democrats are trying to stack the courts with radical left judges on their way out the door. Republican senators need to show up and hold the line. No more judges confirmed before Inauguration Day, Trump truth bombed. Totally right. I broke this down. This crazy guy, Embry kid that got approved because the Republicans wouldn't show up. And I'll tell you, some of you are telling me that Bradley Jay, one of our reporters at Breitbart News, said despite Republican absences, Democrats may have been able to confirm the judges regardless because Senator Fetterman did not vote, although if his vote was needed, Schumer likely would have summoned him. Yeah, but then you would have had to have summoned Kamala Harris, who doesn't want to go back to Washington to cast these votes, break the tie. Get everyone on record. Make Kamala inconvenience herself. You got one job, and that's to vote. We can't let these people get through. You can't make it easy for them, and we did that. So I think Trump's engaged now, but Republicans have got to block as many of these picks as they can. Biden is on the march. His administration now is finalizing $25 billion in green energy initiatives. So there's a thing called the DOE Loan Program Office, where Biden's going to give all these loans for the energy sector. But the green energy in particular, like EV batteries and stuff like that. And there are 29 loans guaranteed, and he hasn't even doled out half. He's trying to dole out the rest. He's finding pots of money to dole around to buddies, to people who can make the institutional left just a little bit stronger and better positioned for future battles ahead. This helps solidify Biden's legacy. This is what he's thinking about. CHIPS funding, the Politico's report, that Gina Raimondo, the Commerce Secretary, she's trying to dole out $50 billion in subsidies from the CHIPS Act that was approved in 2022 and haven't been doled out yet. So they're trying to pass stuff around to other companies and to try to assure them that it's the Biden agenda, the Democrats that have their back. setting Trump in a worse position. We've got to be diligent on this, and we can't really be right now because we're talking about sex scandals with our nominees, which is not something I would have guessed was going to be the case, I got to admit. And now here's the biggie. New York Post exclusive report, Biden administration reportedly working. Sounds like my 2-year-old would say. Biden reportedly working to loosen immigration policies. You don't need to loosen them. They're all going to come anyway. If you're someone who wants to come to the country legally or illegally, you've got to feel like your best chance is to put your foot in the accelerator now. They know that. And now the Biden administration is going to be launching a ICE portal app in the next month in New York City for as many as 100,000 migrants. It'll allow migrants to bypass in-person check-ins with their local ICE office. You think this stuff can't be manipulated? Of course it can. If you trust this, this is a way to make it so that there is more widespread, both legal, illegal, and that gray area that is so common now these days of immigrants in this country, because that favors Democrats. Democrats feel like they benefit from this. So past arrests and warrants are not checked through the app. Again, you think that's a coincidence or you think it's by design? It's all by design. Former Border Protection Commissioner Mark Morgan told the Post this is an obstruction of the transition. What they're trying to do in the last final days, they're going to try to put out as many roadblocks and obstacles and throw as many grenades as they can on their way out. That's exactly what's happening. And we, as a conservative movement, we have got to keep our eye on the ball here. And that's why I'm interjecting this urgent monologue before my interview with Dr. G. But I do want to get to that. Let's turn tables here. Let's change gears. Dr. Sebastian Gorka, your friend and mine. Let's play it. All right, so producer Misty and I were talking about who should be the first ever guest on the Alex Marlow show. And I will tell you, it ended up that there was only one name that we discussed. It was Dr. Sebastian Gorka, my good friend, my colleague on the Salem stations, and probably someone who might be under control by the administration coming up here soon. We don't know for sure, but it seemed like the perfect person to talk to. And he got the one and only invite and hit the bid right away because he's such a great guy. Dr. G, welcome to the Alex Marlow show.
Hey, Misty, the check's in the mail. You know, I wasn't even the first guest for my wife's podcast on Salem. So I can't believe it that you tell me this just as we sit down. I am so touched. You're a friend first. You're employee number one at Breitbart. We were colleagues at Breitbart when I was national security editor. You were so supportive of us in the White House for the first Trump administration. So I am honored, my friend. So in honor of that, we've got to do a little bit of a Trump dance.
Yeah, let's do it. I've been practicing. No one can see my knees. My knees are coordinated right now. We're doing it.
We can do the Elon jump, like the Elon Butler jump, right?
I'm still wearing my Trump. I'm not that good. I'm not that.
You got the head. You got the head movement. So here's to what the Patriots did on November the 5th. Here's to us.
Cheers to that. So Dr. G, I want to talk about.
And welcome to Salem, dude. Love it.
Thank you.
Well done, Phil, and everybody else. Thank you for bringing this guy.
I'm going to do everyone proud. I promise that. Dr. G, so people don't know exactly how far back we go. And this is one thing that people are always sort of shocked by because they know you're a very gifted broadcaster and you're a huge media personality. But you did what I recommend in terms of a lot of people's trajectory is they try to get hot. They try to, let's see if I can get some attention. Let's see if I can go viral. Let's see if I can, get some Facebook followers or something. And I always recommend to people, actually, you should formulate an expertise. You should become a very knowledgeable, maybe the most knowledgeable person on a given subject or, top few people. And then when you've got that backbone, then you can actually have some longevity in the media space. So you did that. And I think people sometimes forget how deep your background is in military history, understanding guerrilla warfare, asymmetric warfare. And your first big gig in the movement was as national security editor for Breitbart before you outgrew us pretty fast. But this is an amazing arc that I think is sort of underappreciated. Talk to us about how you came to us at Breitbart, when this was, and did you ever think your life would go in this direction?
Never. If you told me 20 years ago what I'd be doing or who I'd be working for, I would have said, get thee to the funny farm and put on the straitjacket. If I tell you the story right now, because most people don't know it, they probably won't believe it. But I can document it. Go to my LinkedIn, the dates, the names, the bosses are all there. So, yeah, to your first point, let me say there's a phrase in Hungarian. My parents escaped communist Hungary in the revolution in 56. And there's a phrase in Hungarian called favágás, which means splitting wood. And it means everyone has to split wood for 5 or 10 years before you can talk about being good at something. So today, and I see this even with conservative kids, people I've employed, you don't get to be special in your first job. You don't get to be special maybe in your 5th job or your 6th job. You have to work at something for probably a decade and do things you don't want to do, the scut work, the late hours, and then once you really understand something, you dig yourself into a very special area, you become the person on that issue, then maybe you should think about media, interviews, and clicks. Today, most people have it the other way around. Get the clicks, and then you'll be famous, but you won't know anything. And that is not the way to do it.
Yeah, so, and I believe the cream rises, and I think that if you're really talented, I'm not saying that there aren't going to be exceptions, people who are super smart, but a lot of the younger people who you see who are succeeding, first of all, they fly too close to the sun, and then other times, if they're making it, it's because they really are grinders, and they're putting in 20-hour days, right. And that's hard to sustain. But a lot of it's earned. But this is something that I think is fundamental for any of you in the audience who are younger, or if you have younger children, to recommend that in this, there's such a temptation right now to try to get out in front of a camera and to try to create content just because you're seeing other people do it. I think people should be studying, immersing themselves in things, right. And really putting a bunch of tools in their drawer. And because you don't know which tools you're going to have to call on or which tools you're going to be the most skilled at when you start using them. And I think that's really big. And I'm really grateful. And my children, and I'm probably not even your children, Dr. G, are going to have this luxury. I'm grateful that most of my formative thought was not on video. It was not recorded. It was not on a podcast. Is that I got to apply my craft silently behind the scenes with Andy Breitbart, because I think I would have sounded like a total moron when I was 25.
Look, one of the most exciting things I've done is, I do a lot of public speaking, is when, young people ask me career advice. Yeah. And I always tell them the same thing. I don't care whether you want to be a counterterrorism expert like me. I don't care whether you want to be a brain surgeon. Rule number 1, put the stinking phone down and read a book every day, preferably by a dead white guy, preferably who died more than 400 years ago. So, Shakespeare's the cutoff, but between Plato and Shakespeare, read a book by a dead white guy for an hour a day, and you will do yourself a massive, massive service. So,
it really is, and an important lesson. It is the important lesson. So, but let's talk about the lessons you learned before you were in the public eye. Tell me about some of your background and exactly where your expertise lies, which is where people are going to, Dr. G, you'll probably get tapped for a big job in the Trump administration, maybe within days, maybe within years, but it's going to happen. And when that happens, the media will act like you're unqualified because you're on TV and stuff. And
right.
It's the opposite.
Max Salem host. Right.
This is how you got on
host
TV.
Gets a job. Right.
Yeah.
But they've done with Pete and everybody else.
Yeah.
So it starts very strangely. I'm in college. I'm studying philosophy and theology. I've got hair down almost to my shoulders. And there's a guy that disappears every 2 weeks on a Friday afternoon who's a great guy. And I said to him one Friday, and his name was Guy. I said, Guy, tonight you're coming out with us drinking. And he said, Seb, I can't. I got to be somewhere. And I don't care. He said, look, come with me. And I can't tell you now where I'm going, but come with me and see for yourself. Okay, so I go to this unmarked building in central London. Turns out it's the local headquarters of the Territorial Army Intelligence Corps, which is the intelligence arm of the Reserve British Army. And it's recruitment weekend. And I get given a pair of overalls, put on the back of a truck, and taken out to the middle of nowhere to take part in a selection for the British Army Reserves. And the intelligence corps back then in the 90s was full of freaks, linguists, 80-pound brains. I loved it. I passed the recruitment weekend, got a haircut, and I played soldiers while I was in college for 3 years, and I loved it. Then, at the same time, the Berlin Wall is collapsing. I grew up to parents who'd escaped communist Hungary. My father was liberated from a political prison. And I said, okay, I speak Hungarian, French, German. I served in a NATO army. Can I help the land of my parents rejoin Western Europe after the fall of communism? So I get a phone call, 1993, would you like to be assistant to the Deputy Minister of Defense? And I thought it was a joke. I said, can I have your number? And sure enough, I dialed it back. It had a 36 prefix for Hungary. And it said, yes, this is the Hungarian Ministry of Defense. So I got in my car, drove across the channel in the ferry, ended up in Budapest with my kitchen Hungarian. That was another story. Worked for the Hungarian Defense Ministry in the first Conservative government for 5 years, met my American wife in Europe, started a family, and then 9/11 hits. And thanks to an amazing Marine, a man we lost far too soon, Colonel Nick Pratt, who knew a bit of my work in the British Army and the research I'd done in counterterrorism, I'm invited to teach on a Pentagon-funded counterterrorism program out of something called the Marshall Center in Garmisch-Partenkirchen in Germany. So for 4 years, I commuted between Budapest and Bavaria, taught for the US government this incredible program that was trying to bring together counterterrorism operatives to fight Al-Qaeda. And then one day, I remember my wife, you talk to Katie, you know Katie, we woke up one morning, early 2008, after 12 years for her in Hungary, 15 for me, and we looked at each other and we said, we've done our time, we've helped as much as we can, it's time to leave. And so I applied for 3 jobs in America with my background, West Point, VMI, and National Defense University, and I ended up as a professor and then associate dean of irregular warfare at National Defense University in DC, the pinnacle of postgraduate training for officers in the US military who want to become generals. I loved it. Only in America can a green card holder become a DoD civilian teaching the military irregular warfare. After 5.5 years of that, I went to Quantico. I had the military chair of theory at the Marine Corps University. And I'm sitting there one July day, and I get a phone call from somebody called Corey Lewandowski. No idea who Corey is. And he'd seen my work in Breitbart as your colleague, as national security editor. And he said, candidate Trump is preparing for the fall GOP primary debate on national security. Would you be willing to meet with him? And I said, what, you mean the reality TV guy, the real estate mogul? Yeah, that guy. So I said, okay. So they flew me to New York. I met Donald Trump, then Mr. Trump, sitting in his office in Trump Tower. There's only the 3 of us. Corey's in the corner. Amazing blue sky discussion about everything from the Civil War to ISIS to the utility or non-utility of nuclear weapons. Clearly, he's really interested in this stuff. And then he does a classic Trump. He kills the conversation dead, turns to Corey and says, no, I like this guy. Let's hire him. So I signed an NDA, just like Stormy Daniels. That's the commonality between me and Stormy.
Sure is.
And I started writing briefing papers on 6 topics: Iran, North Korea, ISIS, China, Russia, that the president used to prep for the debate. At the same time, I knew General Flynn, who I met when he was director of the Defense Intelligence Agency. And I start helping him in the transition. My wife starts helping the Department of Homeland Security transition team. And then we win. And I'm planning to go into the administration to work for General Flynn to do counterterrorism in the National Security Council. And eight days before the inauguration, somebody called Steve Bannon reaches down and says, you're not working for Mike, you're working for me in this new think tank, the Strategic Initiatives Group next to the president. And that's how on Saturday, the 21st of January, 2017, I'm walking around the White House looking for my office as someone, and this still gives me goosebumps right now, I had only become an American citizen 5 years prior to that date, and I'm walking around an empty White House as deputy assistant to the president for strategy. So, that's America in a nutshell. And I'm blessed, and I just can't believe that we've done it again, guys. And this time we're going to be serious about draining the swamp. But that success is hugely in part thanks to Breitbart and your team.
Thank you. And I feel that. And it's kind of amazing because I had a similar moment at a similar time. I was just thinking about what are the moments of my career, not just my life. There's lots of great moments of anyone's life if you are trying to live to the fullest as you and I do, Dr. G. But I was thinking about maybe my most profound moment in broadcasting was when we were on Sirius XM and we were working nonstop. It was 24/7 in the run up to the election. And Andrew Breitbart had died in 2012, and then Trump had come down that escalator in 2015. And now all of a sudden, Donald Trump won the presidency. And I'd been up all night. I'd maybe slept for an hour. And I got up in the morning on the day after the election and got to say at 6:03 a.m. that Donald Trump was the president-elect of the United States. And I remember my whole body cascaded with chills. It wasn't just like a chill. It was a freak out. And I was just the thought that, here we are. And I was, I guess, I was 30 years old and I was on national radio saying that Donald Trump was president, and knowing full well it was partially because of me and my team. Like those moments, you don't get those every decade. You don't get those every lifetime, even. And it's so funny because yours must have been wandering around the White House. That just feels like the same sensation as I'm picturing.
Let me just say that day what it was like. Yeah. Because I put this in one of my books. So I don't drink. I haven't drunk since my parents died. So my wife and I have been teetotalers for about 20 years. So the day after the inauguration ball, I'm sober. I don't have a hangover. And I said, it may be Saturday. I'm going to work because I work for the president.
Right.
So I went to this unmarked building, not far from the White House, got picked up by this U.S. Army chauffeur, this black woman who was in civilian clothes. She drives me through the gates, through West Exec Boulevard, to the EEOB, the Eisenhower building. I do my final paperwork, like what bank account is your pay as a White House, official going to, the wire transfers, get my pass. And everybody's hungover. I mean, there's literally nobody in the building. Wow. So I'm walking around. This is freaking me out right now. I'm walking around an empty West Wing on the morning of January the 21st. It's a Saturday. The lunatic pink pussy hat wearing crazies are surrounding the building because, of course, the mayor of Washington said, yeah, you can protest the inauguration. And I'm walking around, and there's a Secret Service agent, a uniformed one, sitting at a desk where the glass doors to the Rose Garden are. And I say to her, how far can I go? And she says, what color is your badge, sir? And I look down, and my badge is still warm from the printer. And I said, it's blue. And she says, you can go wherever you want. And she presses this secret button under the table, and the glass doors that you've seen Carter, Arafat, Clinton, Reagan walk through automatically open. And I, a legal immigrant to the United States, walk out into the Rose Garden. Then I walk into the main building, not the West Wing, the main residence. And I'm underneath the White House next to the China Room. And I hear this pitter-patter upstairs. And I look up, there's a Secret Service agent at the top of the stairs. And he looks at me and says, it's okay, sir. That's Barron and his friend playing hide and go seek. So that was my...
Barron was 10 years old, and he was already 7 feet tall at the time.
Right, and he's running around the White House after the inauguration. And I'm sorry, only in America, a guy with this accent, who only became a citizen 5 years previously, is walking around the West Wing with an all-access pass.
Wow.
That's America.
It really is it's great to hear you just talk about how much all this tradition means to you. And I think that that's something that we're losing it rapidly. Yeah. And do you feel like there's a hope that we can get that love of country back? Because it feels like there's something happening that people are starting to believe in America. And I want to connect this with one of the issues of the day, which is immigration, which is the number 1 or 2 priority for President Trump once he gets in, is getting this under control. And I think one of the reasons why people are finally coming around to an issue that we've championed at Breitbart for over a decade, is that being American means something. America means something. And if you don't have a firm concept of who's coming in, why they're here, what their purpose is, how much they want to be here, why they want to be here, then you're disrespecting all those people, both native-born and immigrants, who are here because America is a special place.
Yeah. Look, we could speak for hours on just the national security ramifications of what we've witnessed in the last 4 years. If just 1% of the 20 million let into this country illegally are malefactors from cartels, from North Korea, enemy agents, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, then that in and of itself is a primary national security threat. But there's a deeper spiritual aspect, and I want to give full credit because you and I were so close to this issue that sometimes it's hard to see it for what it is. And of course, the greatest book on America was written by a foreigner, written by a Frenchman, Alexis de Tocqueville. And I was listening to a man of the left who I dearly admire, who understands Trump, understands Brexit, and he's the chief political writer for the great Spiked Online, which is a kind of Breitbartish thing in the UK. And Brendan O'Neill said something recently on Talk TV, and I had him on my radio show afterwards. He said, what we witnessed in America on November the 5th is primarily a function of people saying, I've had it with the elite and with the Democrats telling me I must be ashamed of my country, and I am proud of my country. And I think of that one moment. I must have played this clip 100 times on my Salem show, on my Newsmax show, that moment that you cannot fake, you cannot rehearse, you cannot artificially generate, of President Trump in that bodega in Harlem, where a legal immigrant was almost murdered by a robber who defended himself and then left the country because he was put in prison by Alvin Bragg and then finally released, but he said, I can't survive in Biden's America. President Trump goes back to that bodega, and what happens outside? A 10-year-old, maybe 11-year-old black kid, and then a Hispanic girl behind him organically starts chanting, "We love you, Trump! We love you, Trump!" And then it spreads out to all the adults outside in Harlem. That's why November the 5th. We've had it, whether you're white, black, yellow, immigrant, native born, you've had it with people telling you America's bad and you should be ashamed. That's why 20% of blacks, that's why Starr County in Texas, what is it, Alex? 93% Hispanic voted for President Trump. Amazing. The first time since 1870. This is November. Don't talk to me about taxes and this regulation, that regulation. We are Americans, and we're going to be proud to be Americans once more. Look at Elon. One more thing, and then I'll shut up. I'm at Butler for the president's return. And we arrived 4 hours early. There are literally, I photographed it, people as far as the horizon. It's full of human beings inside and outside the perimeter. And I'm sitting, I didn't know this, I'm literally the row behind JD. And there's this guy next to him in a baseball cap, and I was kind of out of it that day. Taking selfies, having fun. I thought it was some rapper or something. Then I realized it's Elon. And as the president is speaking, he's only about 20 minutes in. From behind us, this rumble chant begins. And this is rural Pennsylvania. And what's the chant? Elon, Elon, Elon. Now that's not politics. That's spiritual. That a man who has launched the largest aerial vehicle known to man from American soil as an immigrant is there supporting the president, jumping around the stage. That's why we won, because of pride and belief in the greatest nation on God's green earth.
So let's talk about the cultural shift that's taking place, which is kind of amazing to witness. And a lot of it has to do with alternative media, which, of course, we're both a part. But I think a lot of it is understanding that the people who are claiming or to this point, to claim to be the righteous ones and the good people and we're all the bad people, are the ones who left the border open, which, of course, waters down what it means to be an American. It creates a housing crisis. It creates unnecessary competition for Americans who need a leg up. And then you see things like law and order in our streets, the bodega example you mentioned, where the Democrats hate law and order, and the word's getting out on that. And now all of a sudden, it feels like people woke up to it. I think the free speech issues were big here, that one side wants censorship, one side doesn't. But this is a huge phenomenon culturally that we've seen the comedian class, the sports class, the MMA class, even now you're seeing in the NFL, which was kneeling 10 years ago on the sidelines. Now they're doing the Trump dance in the end zone. What shifted? What broke in people, Dr. G?
I think it's just fundamentally a frustration. I mean, we go from, Kaepernick besmirching the Stars and Stripes to the UFC champion saying, let's do this for Peanut. I mean, can we just wrap our heads around the fact that the NFL has had to surrender to the Trump YMCA happy dance, saying, we have no objection. Well, you bloody well better not have any objection, because that's America. I think it's from Robbie Starbuck on down, taking down the woke corporations. It's people who said, you know what? I am not going to buckle. It's the Riley Gaines of the world saying that, excuse me, what happened to my rights as a woman? This transgender lunacy. It's the likes of, James Lindsay, Chris Rufo, telling us the true roots of where all of this comes from. That the politics of the left is fundamentally un-Western and anti-American. I came to this realization maybe a year into doing the radio show for Salem. The taxonomy that we've existed in of Republican and Democrat needs to be deleted. Even liberal or conservative, just delete them. There's one liminal separation of Americans today. And it's a very simple question. Do you love America or do you hate it? Do you believe the 1619 Project is communist propaganda? Or do you think Americans are evil because they got white skin? People either hate America. This is the perverse reality we live in. Think of this. We have an elite that hates the nation of which they are a citizen. And it starts with Obama. We are going to fundamentally transform this nation. You cannot love that which you wish to fundamentally transform. And what's happened is non-political, apolitical Americans have said, I'm sorry, that man does not go into my daughter's changing room. Right. I'm sorry, you're not teaching pedophilic pornography in my child's kindergarten. It's when the non-political starts to realize everything has been made political by the other side and is red-pilled in their tens of millions. And then the last thing is, and this is the thing we can revel in with our little Trump dance, we are the cool kids. Remember what young conservatives used to be like? It was wearing a bow tie with a blazer with brass buttons and pretending to be Tucker Carlson. Go to CPAC and tell me what young conservatives look like now. It's the cool kids. Yeah. We are the counterculture, Alex. And by the way, here's the sweet deliciousness of it all. The counterculture just won 3 weeks ago. We won.
And I think Andrew would be so proud, Andrew Breitbart. Dr. Gorka, of course, hosts America First with Dr. Sebastian Gorka on the Salem stations and on podcasts, and also the Gorka Reality Check on Newsmax. You guys got to stay up on this stuff. He's so good to us in so many ways at Breitbart, and he's wildly entertaining as well as informative. Dr. G, I told you I'd keep it to half an hour. Maybe Musk and Tucker on this thing where you just talk to people for 3 hours. Not Musk, Rogan. It's where they do the 3 hour interview. Maybe I should start doing that because I feel like we got 3 hours in us.
We've easily got it. We've easily got it. But before we sign off, you got to check out Alex's books.
Oh, thank you.
And Andrew's book, Righteous Indignation, is life-changing. Just start with chapter 6. If you want to understand how the left became the left, it inspired me to write my third book, so Righteous Indignation. And may I make a recommendation for your podcast?
Please.
We want to keep the nepotism high. Katie Gorka and her book, co-authored with Mike Gonzalez, Next Gen Marxism. This is what the left became, and the last chapter is what we do about it. So for the next 4 years, we've got a recipe. Katie has all the details, but in the meantime, welcome to the coolest faculty on podcast talk radio, Alex Marlow.
Thank you, Dr. G. And Katie Show's a blast, by the way, the Happy Women podcast, so people should pull that down as well. And I see it popping up in your feed, Dr. G, so that's probably good. For them. So that's a good way to find it. I got a couple of quick ones before I let you run. The left seems lost here, and this is one of the things I'm tracking on the show. All of their power centers are in the progressive, which is usually regressive wing, the far left wing. A few times people are standing up and saying maybe we're doing too hard on the trans stuff, and maybe we should actually have a border occasionally, but they can't really say that, can they? Are they able to put the toothpaste back in the tube at all, or are they just going to flail around like Sonny Hostin is doing on The View these days?
Right. Under pressure from the legal team.
Yeah.
I've only seen two people say anything of weight on the left, and that was the avowed communist Van Jones, and then who's the crypt keeper? Who's Skeletor? The one who said this is what you get
Carville?
if you drag Carville. See, I knew you get it. So Carville,
I knew what you were talking about. I never heard him called that before, but he definitely has a skeletal look to him.
Carville and Van Jones have said a couple of things where they get it. Nobody else has. They are digging themselves deeper. They are digging themselves deeper. When you call black men misogynists for voting for President Trump and Hispanics stupid for voting for President Trump, as a host on a left-wing show, bless you, keep saying that because we're going to trounce you again in 2 years' time. Dan Bongino said something interesting that I don't know if you concur with, and I'd be curious. He said they can't do anything but continue because the grift is so big and so much money depends upon them still getting their funders from the billionaires who like the transgender no borders garbage, that they just have to read the scripts. What do you think of that?
Yeah, that is my take overall. I think ultimately the left is going to win their civil war. They need to have a civil war the way we had with the establishment, we and the anti-establishment America First wing, and we won ours. It's not totally over, but it's mostly over, and we mostly won. But they need to have theirs, and they've got common sense, normal people who think of a version of the Democrat Party that hasn't existed in a while, but for some reason they're committed to it, and we can explore why they're so committed to it, versus the people who have actual power in the party, and those are the wild left-wingers. So watch cities like L.A., watch governors like J.B. Pritzker and Gavin Newsom, see what these guys are doing. If they're going harder left, which they are so far, then it shows that that's who's going to win their civil war. And if they are attacking towards the middle, the people who want to be president, who are Democrat elected people right now, then I think you'll start thinking, well, maybe they might come back to sanity. So I think overall, my take, Dr. G, is that's good for us because it'll make it easier to beat, but it makes it much higher stakes. Because if we lose, then we're going to get something that doesn't even resemble the Bill Clinton version of America, maybe not even the Barack Obama version of America. It'll be some sort of accelerated Marxism the way we have not seen in this country. We haven't even contemplated it, really. It just seems like that is where they're going to end up, but maybe I'll be wrong.
Well, that's an amazing caveat, and I'm going to build that into my latest piece for you at Breitbart on how President Trump broke politics. I love that, and I will quote you, Mr. Marlow.
Well, please do, Dr. G. Last one I got to get your thoughts on. It seems like Joe Biden is trying to make a mess out of everything in the last few days of his presidency, Middle East, Russia, Ukraine. What is he trying to do? And is there anything we can do to stop him? Because I feel like Trump will just get impeached if he tries to step in at all.
The Logan Act, we've got to be careful with that one because that's what they tried to use before with Mike Flynn. Look, and I'm not trying to be facetious. I'm being deadly serious here. I mean, I was strategist to the president. I've been doing this for 30 years. You want me to tell you what North Korea's planning, Russia's planning, ISIS is planning? I can tell you what China's planning because, I read these people and I've analyzed their strategic culture. I can't tell you what the White House and the Democrats are doing because I can't channel insanity. Okay? And I'm not being funny. I mean, look at what they did to President Trump in the last 3 years. After the second indictment, and he gets even more popular and more money, you would have a rational actor says, you know what, let's stop indicting him. But then they indict him again and again and again. These are not rational actors.
Yeah.
These are people driven by one thing alone: utter complete hatred and contempt of the American people. So when you're not a logical actor and your only motivation is ideology, I can't really predict your actions. All I know is this is insanity. If somebody had written in a Tom Clancy book 20 years ago that North Koreans are fighting in Ukraine for Russia, or that a ballistic missile, a continental ballistic missile, is being launched from one part of Europe to another, not across the Atlantic, you would have said, Tom, cut it out. That's crazy. That's happening right now. So that's why, thank the good Lord, the transition team is working every hour God sends to make sure that people know the old new sheriff is on his way back.
Beautifully said. Dr. Sebastian Gorka, America First is his show. The Gorka Reality Check also on Newsmax. And a good friend, always be my friend, Dr. G. A wonderful first guest. This one even better than I anticipated. And I had high hopes. Thanks to our wonderful producer, Misty. That's today's show. Talk to you tomorrow.